Welcome back to the Wrong Kind of Music Podcast. Today we're talking about Metal to the Masses. It's finally over after, I say finally over, like fucking thank fuck for that. No. We're talking about Metal to the Masses. The final has taken place. We do have a winner, which is Acid Age, but we'll come to that in a bit. I'll start off by introducing everyone to the podcast today. Phil's back, as always, one of our regulars. Same again with Claire, one of our regulars. And we actually have Jude from Acid Age.
Irregular.
Winner of Metal to the Masses Belfast 2023. So massive congratulations on that.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Thanks
well
for having me.
deserved. Well deserved. I don't have a list of topics to talk about, so we're just going to entirely wing it. We'll start off. We'll just go around the table and what did you think of it? Metal to the Masses 2023, 6 heats, 3 semi-finals and a final. Good crack. Enjoy it.
Yeah, great crack. I think that's 10 events over the course of probably 3 months there, and we've seen an awful lot of bands, 24 bands ish. Yep. Yeah, 24 bands play and whittled it down to just the one. I think it's been I'll say it up front, I was a wee bit concerned. I think at the very, very start that I thought it was one of the years that might have struggled. But I'll be honest, with the 6 bands that we ended up with in the final, and even there were bands that I want to say should have been in the final. That's a wrong statement, because it's just like they just didn't get there. But bands that could have been in the final maybe is a better way of terming it. But we, I think it was a great show, and at the end of the 6 bands we were left with were definitely worthy of being there, and I think we absolutely show just how strong Belfast is as a scene with what we put out. So that's my brief summary, because I don't want to give somebody else a chance.
Well, I mean, you did just practically steal what I was going to say of the, because I mean, whenever the poster first went out, like our group chat, it was very much a, oh no, oh dear, is this, there was a lot of the big names that you were expecting there weren't back this year. There was a lot of new bands, which are always a bit worrying, and a lot of them don't have a lot of stuff online, and you were trying to find stuff, and it's like, But no, I think that this year's final, significantly, I think a stronger final than last year, possibly one of the strongest we've ever had, and as Phil said, there was other bands that could be there, and again, we had 6 really good bands, all completely different genres, really. They're all very distinct. Yeah, just showing the depth that there is in the scene. It's so wide and so varied, and had an absolute blast.
I think, obviously it has to be my favourite one. Right? Oh my goodness.
Right.
2 seconds.
See, this is what happens. See when you bring people on for the first time,
Hi, Mum. Sorry, that was my agent. No,
that was offers for Metal Days, Rock on Ring, and Summer Breeze. Yeah.
Phone hasn't stopped since Friday. I'm tagged in dick pics and everything. No,
Can we leave Jude out of it? Sorry, Jake. I meant to say Jake there.
You see, my mind went to Aaron.
No, I really enjoyed. Obviously, we played, but we were the first band on in the final. Immediately afterwards, I just sat and watched every band, and we kind of played at a level where we were all really happy. We were like, afterwards, we were saying that couldn't have went any better. So, if we get beat today, we're totally happy, because we were 100% satisfied with what we done. We were like, any band that beats us, like, really deserved it, because like that is us at our peak there. So we were super happy. And then that made it easier for us just to relax, and we weren't watching other bands and thinking like, oh shit, or anything. Just enjoying the show, enjoying the experience. Like, I became a huge fan of Terrace that night. I was like, they are fucking lethal. I loved every second.
So many people have said so much.
That wasn't even
things.
her at Phil
Hunter, the vocalist. Yeah.
Well, I thought they were amazing. I really enjoyed them. That was my first time seeing them. The other bands I've seen before, and I liked all the. I thought, wow, what a final too. Like. Competition aside, what a great gig.
Yeah.
I mean, I know some people get a wee bit they're not keen on the idea of band competitions and stuff. I've always thought that this one stands above the rest because the prize is something meaningful, you know. I've seen band competitions before where you win 2 hours in the studio with such and such, or 300 quid, which is split between 5 band members or whatever. Isn't really anything, you know.
Big buggy or something.
I think getting to play Bloodstocks, it makes it what it is. If the prize wasn't that, Metal of the Masses just wouldn't be what it was.
Well, I've said to a lot of other bands, you should enter it at least once. Your band should try it out, you know, because the worst case scenario is the heats are always packed. They're always good turnout. Even ones that are like slightly lower numbers, they're still good turnouts, you know, especially if you're a band trying to cut your teeth or whatever. And there's always good photographs, good photography, good stage, good lights, good sound, you know. The worst case scenario is your social media is going to look a bit better. You're going to get a free review and you'll be able to stick it up. And, you know,
absolutely, yeah.
I think it's a good opportunity. Like, I've always enjoyed it, you know. And obviously, we've done it 5 times, you know. So it's.
And there won't be a second.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about it. See, just this morning.
That was genuinely my first thought when you won. I thought he's going to be fucking raging.
Yeah. I'm not joking, because usually around late January, early February, we're getting ready, you know, and like getting all excited about, you know, there's at least 1, maybe 3 gigs now out of my gigging year gone. It's like, shit. Give it to Terrace.
No, it's one of the, definitely one of those standout nights. There are big dates in the calendar in the metal year. Metal Masses final is for me the biggest. I've said it before. It's kind of my World Cup final to a degree. It's the one I get excited about, you know, because
fuck the Irvine. Well,
yeah.
maybe not. I know you love that.
Yeah, here it's entertaining. Like,
yeah,
stayed up and watched it all last night. But anyway,
me too.
But yeah, so it's the one that I look forward to the most, and you know, it's just such a feel good night for the scene as well. Just all the bands there, nobody was a dick, you know, which is brilliant, and the sense of community and people just having a bloody good time. Even the fact that actually there were other members of other bands that weren't even playing that night that were down, you know, bands from previous winners. You know, Andy from the Crawling, Freddie from the Mattis was down. You know, a couple.
Shane from Insidious Void as well.
Shane was there. Anto from Senescence. Like, there was a lot of people down there that were just, you know, down to a celebration of Belfast and the scene that we've got.
Yeah.
So brilliant time for me.
No, so it's really, really good to see that, because I know that, you know, we've been going to these for fucking years. Like, I think, what is this, the 7th or 8th time it's been done in Belfast?
They were saying it was close to a decade whenever they were on the stage, and I don't think they're actually all that far off.
Most bands, I have found that the vast majority of bands have been really, really humble about it. Like you said yourself, just what you were saying to me sums that up. The fact that you've done the best you could. If you don't win, you don't win, and there's no hard feelings about that and stuff.
I will say, I've seen in previous years bands that have got like butthurt, and you know, I've seen bands, this is rigged, and I'm not doing it again, and you know,
it seems a real shame to me about that, because as you say, it's an opportunity to play in front of a really good crowd. It's an opportunity to play in front of people that wouldn't necessarily have found your band. You know, like, I don't know about you guys, but there's at least 3 bands that are like high up on my radar now that I really, really like, that I want to see more often.
I
probably wouldn't have seen them if it wasn't for Metal of the Masses.
Like I've always said, for me, really a successful Metal of the Masses for me is I walk away with a new band that I like. Yeah. And there's at least 3, potentially 4 from this year, which is just, you know, outstanding.
Specifically who then?
Terrace, who we mentioned. The Boat Sank.
The Boat Sank, I think, are
loved them.
Incredible.
Class lads too. Incredible. Really, really good guys.
Asphyxiation.
I was going to mention them myself as well.
RPC.
Yeah. RPC were so much fun.
And do you know what? Monstrosity. I mean, their live wasn't good, but you know what I mean? It's still, you know, so that's 5 new bands that I have become aware of, because I wouldn't have listened to Monstrosity EP, I don't think, if we hadn't gone to see them, potentially. So yeah, 5 bands.
Yeah.
Which is, that's mad.
RPC are amazing too. Jim actually plays in Hashmaker as well.
I didn't realise there was a crossover between those two bands. Okay.
We played with them at Templemere, and like he was running around tables in his underwear and doing his thing, you know. It was like, who's this wipeout? It was like 12 o'clock, you know. You know, there was like kids there. One guy maybe had a bit of a pint that was watered down, and you know, and there he was going nuts. It was like, that's class, unbelievable.
Yeah, because I listened to the latest Hashmaker release. I think I talked about this before. I think there's 5 or 6 songs on it, right? And the last one's a big rave song, right? And I just sort of thought it was, you know, the way if you have Spotify or Apple Music or whatever, sometimes whenever it finishes an EP or whatever it goes, I have a rough idea what you want to listen to next. Hear some Anger Fist or something. I just assumed that it'd done that, and then went back and checked, and it was like, oh, this is still them. I'm like, if they play this live,
Lethal.
I need to see this. I need to see this, you know. Band that definitely don't take themselves too seriously, and likewise with RPC, just seemed like a band that had so much fucking fun on stage.
And it's sort of like what you're saying about Monstrosity as well. There's some bands that you hear descriptions of and you don't want to check them out, and then when you go to the competition it's like, whoa, they're amazing. Like I'm talking about Terrace earlier on. Yeah. They were the only band in our heat that I hadn't heard, you know. And I said to someone, oh, who are they? What are they like? And the description I got was, oh, they're like grungy, but they have the Viking runes on the face. And, you know, I was like, if you could pick anything I don't like, you're going to tell me it's fucking like L7 meets Pagan Bollocks. You know, like, I really can't be arsed with that. Like, and then I watched them and my jaw was just hanging. I was like, that is phenomenal. It's like full of melody, good rhythm, great time, and really good presence too. I thought they were class.
Their presence and their performance is their secret weapon, without a doubt. Like,
and I think the light show that like this really green like lighting that Andy had done for the night, and I think he done such a good job.
Out of curiosity, because this is something I often don't know a whole lot about. Like for that night in particular, for the final, or even for the heats and stuff, do you have much input on the lights and whatnot?
Every single gig. It's actually your fault.
Right,
I'm gonna drop this on this podcast a year or two ago. You made a dig about red lights. You're like, I fucking hate taking photographs in red lights.
Terrible.
It's the worst thing in the world.
Yeah.
So every single gig we've done since, I've told the lighting engineer, no red lights. And when they come up and they say, like, what do you want? I always say nebula colours, purple, greens, blues, trippy, psychedelic, kind of spacey colours. And that's kind of our wee theme now. So like we've done that every gig since. And it clearly works for us. You know,
the red thing, the dousing the stage in red, I know it works for certain bands. Like, I mean, if I went and seen Slayer and at no stage was there
was no red,
stage, you kind of be like, it's fucking Slayer. You know?
Yeah.
It needs to be doused, and you need to have that blood aesthetic at some stage. But at the same time, it's kind of cliched. You know, there's bands that can get away with it, and there's bands where not so much.
I saw Eval do it. It works great for them as well. You know?
I think Imperial Demonic on that night as well. Red light worked really well, but it's like black, white, and red. Those are the colours that they focus on. Their scribs at the back.
The lights at the front of the stage seem to be so much more improved than Voodoo now, because I'm sure people are loving this. Did you check the podcast? They talked about lights the whole fucking time. but like, there's a lot of like white at the front, so like when Andy was coming forward, he was really, really well lit and stuff. I thought it looked fucking class, because I've seen it so many times where bands come to the front of the stage and then you lose them. They're actually stepping out of the light and in the darkness and stuff.
Can we talk a little bit about that performance though?
The Imperial Demonic one?
Yeah, just
sure.
That performance was just fucking. I thought it was amazing. I thought he was just on. He's been brilliant the whole way through. Any time that we've seen him, he's been great. He's a real natural front man. Again, weird for a guy that plays bass. You know, you take a bass away and he's comfortable on stage. But like, there's a wee bit extra there. Theatre, with the massive rosary beads and the sort of the sort of the inverted cross thing that he had, and then sort of he could. every time without fail he struggles with the corpse paint getting into the eyes, and you can see it. But then even that, just at the very last song, did you notice where he had like a sponge or something?
He seemed to pour ink over his entire face. Yeah.
I just suddenly looked up and it was like, why are you suddenly just
completely black?
All the black. It was like,
sure, his eyes were stinging like fuck. It must have been
absolutely.
I then thought, pity the next person someone's going to come up and grab that mic stand and just be like, why am I covered in black ink?
Yeah, but like it just looked really, really fucking mean. And I just went, it was class. I thought it was all brilliant.
I have to admit, Imperial Demonic, for me, seeing them for a third time, it just didn't land for me on the third occasion. I think seeing them in such a short period of time, I do think, as you say, Andy, fantastic frontman, absolutely fantastic. But I don't know, it just felt a bit like I've seen this too much, too often, and it ran its course for me.
Not for you.
But
I can't really offer him up any sort of constructive criticism or feedback from Friday, because I think I said sober for almost every heat and semi-final, and I told everyone in advance I was getting stupid drunk, and I achieved that rather quickly. So I was just having the time of my life bouncing around.
You spent a lot of time right up the front, like.
I mean, where else would you be? And I had my own beer delivery service.
You actually watched more bands than even played that night.
Because you were seeing double of them.
So I apologise to anyone that I may
all
have
8 bands were amazing. It's like, Claire, there was only 6.
Yeah, but I really enjoyed that performance, specifically from Andy. But I mean, then you've got Cameron in the back as well. Just
great
unreal drumming. And I like the way they set up the stage as well, with the scribs and stuff too.
Do you think they suffered from a lack of a bass player? Because in the original heat, they had Gaz on bass, and he wasn't there for the semi-finals, and he wasn't there for the finals. Do you think that had an impact? Or
I do.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's not going to improve it. You know, you're taking something away.
Yeah.
Do you know, funny, sort of related. Friend of mine, you know, Mo Sheeran from Nebularis. I was talking to her. She done her heat last night, and they didn't win, but she was telling me that Simon went up to them and says, "Yous were amazing, but yous need a bass player." So
do they not have a bass player?
No.
Right, because I actually seen a wee video this morning.
So
and
I think,
it was like, did they not have a bass player, or did he not show, or what was the crack?
Yeah, it's 3-piece. It's guitarist, vocalist, drummer.
Yeah.
So I think it probably makes a difference to Simon to have, you know, the low end or whatever.
I think there's even, it's not necessarily when you're listening to it, and because I personally find that a lot of times, especially live, bass can kind of get lost. You know, you're not actually, depends on the music.
Not Jake.
I wasn't going to say that's the exception, but sometimes bass just kind of fills the music, if you get what I mean. You're not listening to
You
bass
don't
notes.
hear bass, you feel it. You know?
That's a
Like
really, really good way of putting it. And also, there's a visual aspect and almost an expectation. You know, we all. I doubt there's anyone in this room that listens to less than 100 different bands, and 99% of those bands have at least a drummer, a guitarist, a bass player, and a vocalist. You know, there's that tradition of how that music is written and played and performed. And even if a band doesn't need a bass player, I think sometimes if it's not there, there's a wee part of your brain that's just going, something's missing there. Something's missing.
I mean,
you know?
Going off what you said, from what Simon has said up to Nebularis, and I mean, like, I, unfortunately for him, was chatting away to him after your set. But I mean, like, he was blown away by Jake, and he was going on about that bass player. I mean, the way he was moving. So, you know, maybe Simon does appreciate a good bass player, and that's, if you don't have one, you're gonna suffer.
Exactly. It was this exact same conversation that I had, and it was just like, it was like, that bass is unreal, you know. It was unbelievable. And I mean, like, that's not, you don't, you're 3 people that are all fucking tremendously fucking good at what you do, you know. But I think it's, you know, and then you've got Jake there, who's, for my money, comfortably the best bassist in any band.
Ever.
we say it all the time. We say it like so many times.
I'm always winding them up saying like, you're a sickening bastard, you're as handsome as you're talented. There's a girl came up to us after a gig one time and she was inebriated and she says, "You look like Chris Cornell, you're gorgeous." And now every time like someone says, "Oh, Jake's amazing, what a bass player," and I'm like, "Yeah, and he looks like Chris Cornell."
And he's so humble as well. He's just so like down to earth.
Can we take a very quick 2-minute breather?
Yeah.
There was one time Mark Russell was on this and he was like, "Jake's the best bass player in this island," and Jake for like a week was saying, "I'm the best bass player in this island, and this island is 2 countries, so I'm the best bass player in 2 countries, and I wasn't born in either of them." You're next, England.
It's tremendous.
I mean, let's be honest. He possibly could be the best player.
Right,
Bass player
just
at
being
Bloodstock.
funny.
James Leach exists. Hang on.
There's a band called Snowblind, and I remember being very, very impressed with their bass player.
Love Snowblind. Love those guys.
In such, I don't even remember what kind of music they play. I just remember standing there going,
It's just like proggy heavy metal.
I was gonna say they're just like well, the name screams Sabbath anyway.
They've a new single just came out. It's really good.
Yeah. Anyway, back to it.
yeah, no, this is it.
Oh, this is it.
Sorry, Jake.
So, yeah, I want to focus in on Acid Age then for a little bit. Did you guys have any sort of tactics or like an approach to how you just wanted to play each heat in the semi-final and the final? I mean, I assume the set list was different for each show.
Yeah, that's interesting. So we've done it 5 times. First 3 times we went home on the semi-final every time. So we were like, let's beat our streak and go to a final just once. And then last year sent home in heat 1. Like, oh yeah, we beat our streak.
That was the heat of death, wasn't it? That
was
year?
brutal.
Yeah.
But you know what's amazing? This year on our first heat, we actually played the same set that sent us home last time, right?
Okay.
And we played it tighter last year, but we went through this year. So we were like, that's interesting. And I love the competition. I think it's amazing. As I've said, I think it's a great opportunity for reviews, photos, stage lights, everything. Perfect kickstart for any band. But I think a lot of it does come down to how many of your mates you can drag down.
Sure.
I think, if you do have a certain band you like, you need to make an effort to go down and support them and give them your vote. So with that in mind, what we decided to do was just go and be ourselves and just play the set that we wanted to play for ourselves. And each time we would change it up. And there was a few interesting things that happened this time as well. Like, we did our 10th anniversary show in February, but there was also like Metal to the Masses heat. I think it was our second heat, and it was like 6 days later or something. Mm-hmm. And James actually contacted us and says, "Look, this date's been moved and blah blah blah." And he says, "Do you want to swap with another band? Don't worry about it. Like, if you want to swap," he says, "I know your anniversary show's coming up, and I know your Metal to the Masses thing. He says, I don't want to split your crowd, so that do you want to do this or whatever?" And we were like, "No, you know what? It's happened for a reason. Let's just roll with it." And things like that kept happening this time, and it seemed to work. So I think we just went out and played our set just the way we wanted every time, and we just allowed any changes that happened around us. We just allowed them, and just everything happens for a reason type attitude.
Just roll with it.
Not to be too not even to be esoteric or whatever, but we were just like, we'll just see what happens if we don't. Oh, I want to change the date because I don't want to split my audience. And the other thing is, we're like, one thing that I'm happy about is we're an out of town band.
Yeah.
So it is harder to drag mates.
100%. Oh yeah.
It's like easy if you live in Belfast and you can bring all your workmates and your schoolmates and your man, your girlfriend, whatever else. But like, for us, it's saying to a couple of culties like, "Do you want to come down and see my band playing?" And they're like, "Oh, let me see if I'm working." And one of our heats was a Thursday night, and it was just like a nightmare. The travel an hour down, an hour back,
Yeah. See, I don't disagree with you on that point, but I also think To me, there's two big advantages when it comes to the crowd vote. Number one, being a Belfast band, right? Because it's way easier if you've got a lot of fans and friends that live out in Cookstown or that direction. It's much tougher to get them into Belfast than it is from a band that lives a 5-minute taxi ride from the place. And then the second big advantage, I think personally, is if you're a younger band, it's way easier to get your mates out than if you're in your 30s or whatever, and people have got kids and they need to get babysitters and stuff to get out. So to me, two big advantages would be A, being from Belfast, 2, being young and having young friends. But with that being said, we didn't end up with a final with 6 bands full of young members from Belfast.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was still a spread. So to me, I know that people say that it shouldn't be judged this way, it shouldn't be judged that way. I think it is the best that it could be the way that it's judged.
Absolutely.
And I think it works. I think if it didn't work, you wouldn't have had a final like the final had.
James has always said that it's the threes that get you through. It's the band that pulls in the most threes. Because you have, your bands will have your fans that have your guaranteed 4s. But then, if you're not a good band, you don't get those other 3s.
I think that's why we didn't have Dowian in the final. Because I think if, Dowian played with 3 sort of rocky, metal-y bands, I think it played with Cursed Sun, Terrace...
And Senescence.
And Senescence, right? So if you came down for talk's sake for Cursed Sun, your second vote might have went to...
Terrace or whatever.
Terrace or Senescence.
Yeah.
Likewise for the other ones. I think if Dowian had been played with Imperial Demonic and Insidious Void, that would have played out very differently.
Andy would have been very tired, but sure.
So there is an element of luck of the draw, without a doubt, and I think that's stuff that just can't be avoided. I think it would be weird if you tried to genreify each semi-final,
I also think then we wouldn't get maybe the final we got where you've got the very distinct bands, because if you put say all the thrash bands together, then maybe you'd get 2 thrash. I like the spread.
You know what else is an interesting thought is Jake from Elder Druid was saying to Aaron, and then Aaron said to us in practice, he was like, do you ever think that maybe Simon Hall is looking for a certain band? So for example, if he's been to the Manchester Heat and the London Heat and whatever before, he might have 3 thrash bands, don't want another one. Do you know?
Yeah.
So I was like, that's kind of interesting.
We've thought about that and discussed that.
Which I think Belfast then benefits in a way from, because it's usually one of the very first.
Eclectic
We've made this point before though, because there's always been this perception that unless you're a death metal band or a black metal band, you've no chance, right? And I know I'm repeating myself. I've said this before. Go to Bloodstock. Go and stand in front of the Metal of the Masses stage. Sure. It ain't black and death metal all day long.
Sure, we had that band that were like the Lion King tribute or something. Do you remember that?
Yeah,
they were terrible.
I don't think they were winners.
I think it's called Kings of Leon. Not Lion King.
There was this very odd band whenever we were there the last time, and it was just, I went through it all, and I was like, what the fuck?
It was a gimmicky band.
Yeah.
Really gimmicky.
That's a big thing now, especially with the internet. It's like, this band, they dress like Ned Flanders and they play Cannibal Corpse songs and ukuleles. So ironic. And I'm fucking sick of every one of those bands.
the ones, I'm not going to lie, there are some bands that are silly bands and fun bands that I really, really like. I mean, it's really hard for me to criticize other gimmicky bands when I listen to Goodlax.
No, I'm going to see them actually. I'm making that's my Saturday at Bloodstock.
But I don't know. To me,
they're gimmicky, but they are still good.
They're gimmicky, but they're really fucking good. It weirds me out that some of those bands, like that Ned Flanders band, how does that have longevity? How do you not listen to that twice and go, that was a laugh, nah, I'm done with it?
How do you not, if I was in that band, I'm sure I would have lost the will to live after a while.
They played the Empire.
Yeah. I have heard stories.
They sold it out.
Sold the Empire.
That's the thing, it's like if someone told you a joke, it's funny, but if they told you the same joke 10 times, it stops being funny.
I sort of have that relationship with Steel Panther. When the first Steel Panther album came out, I was like, this is funny, this is cool, and great guitar playing. And then the second one, it was like, and then the third one, it was like, Jesus Christ.
I think me and Claire are on the same page that we fell out with Steel Panther whenever they kind of became what they were.
Taking the piss out of it.
But we'll not get too far into that.
I think the point that you were about to make and then got distracted from was like you've heard stories of people feel like they're trapped in those bands. There's people in bands and they started this thing as a laugh with their mates, and then against all the odds this band has took off, and then they're kind of living that dream of I'm in a band that makes money but I hate this.
Well, from what I hear, and it's hearsay so I can't confirm it, apparently the people in Hailstorm do not like the music they play.
They wrote a song called Scraping the Barrel.
They're far down this fucking rabbit hole that, you know, it pays the bills, and what else are you going to fucking do at this stage, you know?
Yeah.
That's probably why Gaz is in Imperial Demonic, is
See, to be
please
honest,
let this band take off so I can
It's
leave.
probably not a kick in the ass off my own IT career, if I'm honest, you know, but
I much prefer Imperial Demonic, like, just throw it out there.
over Hailstorm.
Yeah, without a doubt.
I was just going. There was one thing about your set, and I think on Friday night there that really, I thought starts your set really well, and it's the very start, and it's that fucking inhale scream that you do, that big massive one. Was at the start of Death of
Victoria. Yeah.
It's just like it's the first thing that happens the whole night, and it's this big massive fucking inhale scream that's you know, fucking just sets the tone, and you're like, we're in for a ride here.
That's another thing, because you're saying like it's set in the night. When bands get upset, a lot of them will say things like, "Oh, it's rigged. You know, I've heard that so many times. You know, it's not. You know, I've done it 5 times. I've seen
How it goes.
I've seen the behind the scenes in the most disgusting way that you can, and I'm telling you, it's definitely not. I've seen like even the way the bands are called and decided who goes on. The bands pick out of a hat. So like for our heat, the boat sank. One of the members put his hand in, pulled out. Oh, Acid Age. Do you know what I mean? And then the next one goes, we were on first. You know.
Yeah.
And yet we're the band that won it. So like.
It doesn't matter. Like, you know, it truly didn't. And I mean, in that particular evening, it was absolutely unreal to see the turnout.
I wouldn't have liked to have been judging it, like, because my band aside, let's say my band's out of it, whatever, I couldn't have called it. Like, it was tough.
I mean, I think Simon Hall is very experienced, and you know, he's done this a lot. He's seen a lot of bands, and I think he is very able to look past. Just because you maybe have the biggest fan turnout and stuff, he's able to look and go, what's going to work best for Bloodstock?
What he did,
and he sees through, you know, a lot of it. I think it's a very professional from his part.
See if it was
he
me.
takes that into account.
See if it was me, right? And this might sound a wee bit sly, but I think I'd have a wee chat with each of the bands, right? And I'd drop a wee line of, right, if he's going over, lads, we'll give you 24 cans of beers between the band, and you can all get fucked up and I'll be a keg, and see how the bands react to that. You know, and if they're like, fucking brilliant, yes, let's go over and we'll all get fucking hammered, I'd be a wee bit like, maybe you're not the band.
I don't. He's
you know?
not that.
I know he's not. I'm saying I would do
called a
that.
honey trap.
I would do that. You know.
But one thing he did say is his professionalism. He looks at that, so he's not like it's a wee word. It is a wee thing, and he'd go up to the likes of, you know, the sound guys and be like, right, what do they like to work with? Because he's like, chances are, if you're addicted to the sound guy, I don't want you playing it for me. Like, so that's all stuff you got to do, take into account, because that is something that he's going to do.
I'm fairly certain over the years I have seen there are certain people that have cost their band a slot, any chance, because they have not been able to contain themselves and they've got themselves wrecked in the final. And he's just went, I am not letting you come to my final.
Even I think drinking on stage, like, well, depends, because I know you have a wee pint of Guinness that you enjoy during stage.
You have to understand, when you're screaming and playing guitar and there's stage lights that are blurring, like, you need your mouth to be wet, you know. Another problem I have commonly is this. You try singing.
Well, tell me this, like, whenever you hit Bloodstock, do you have any sort of tactics for how you're going to approach it? Or is it just...
Have you had time to think about that yet?
Just
it hasn't sunk in. Like, it actually hasn't sunk. Like, right after, like, yesterday or whatever, whenever I woke up, it was like the morning after, first thing I was like, that was a weird dream, you know. And I reached for my phone and couldn't actually believe, like it.
I seen the Facebook post. It was just like, what the fuck?
Yeah. But I didn't even react. None of us did. We've spoke about it. We didn't even react the way we thought we would. You know, you hear your, like any band, I'm sorry, but any band that says they haven't imagined hearing their name shouted out at the end is a liar. Sorry. And I thought we'd all be like, yeah! But there's actual footage of us that, you know, a friend caught over my shoulder, and he's caught this clip, and you actually see me turn around and be like, what? You know, it was like weird. It was surreal. So I haven't actually had time to think, oh yes, I'm going to go and play this song and play that song. Like, you know what I've actually done? I've actually just looked at the lineup and went, going to see them.
Have you been to Bloodstock before?
First time.
This is your first time going to Bloodstock? Well, that'll be... I bet you're going to have a fucking blast.
I know.
Yeah, it's a top festival.
I hope you get to play early so that you don't accidentally get carried away the night before, get really drunk, and then play your set hungover.
We're actually not really that kind of band anyway. You know, like...
Aye, but when you go to Bloodstock, things happen.
We're kind of more dorky anyway. You know.
I think, well, we've talked about this loads, you know, with other bands and stuff. I think one of the big things is getting over there and trying to locate other bands that are on the same wavelength as you know, and kind of setting up future tours and stuff where, you know...
There's a band called Pest Control that I am absolutely loving. They've just released their first album, and they're playing, and I'm like, fuck every other band. Like, if I get a chance to go and speak to them, it's like, please, you know, wherever you want to go, we'll follow. Let's just do something, you know. You'd love them too. They're like a hardcore, like crossover type thing.
Stuff.
Oh yeah,
excellent.
Rancid, like.
I think Jake from like Elder Druid talked about, like, I think he was surprised maybe about the amount of press stuff and interviews and that sort of, you know, you're gonna have to sort of get all that organised, and you know, maybe I'm missing.
It's from what I hear from other people who've been there and that have done that and stuff. It's getting that balance right of trying to network and, you know, get speaking to other promoters that are potentially there, other bands that are there, but at the same time you don't want to stand talking shit to someone if three of your favourite bands are playing on the stage. You know, you want to enjoy the festival as well, you know, because it's too good a festival to completely miss.
Yeah,
you know?
At the end of the day, as good as the festival is, I'm kind of there to be Jude from Acid Age, you know, and that's got to take priority.
This is an opportunity for the band.
Yeah,
you need to take it.
For sure, yeah. Absolutely. The thing that's making me most nervous is Freddie from Nomadis was telling me, when you go, they take your paddle board off you and they take your gear off you and they set it up for you, and you're not allowed to, you know, set your own stuff up. And I was like, what? You're not fucking touching my shit.
But the turnaround's incredible. Like, we have stood and watched it. It's something else. Like, you know, they run a really, really slick machine on that stage, and it's not like, I've heard of other festivals and stuff doing the whole, you know, we do breaking bands and stuff, but they don't, from what I gather at least, they do not treat the bands the way Bloodstock treat the bands. You know, it is not a place to be fucking about. You know?
I mean, every year in like the Bloodstock group, you'll get the, hi, I'm such and such and I'm the guitar tech at New Blood stage. This is what we expect. You know, this isn't... I'm fairly certain they keep saying, we like biscuits, you know, so... Bring biscuits.
I like biscuits too.
We all like biscuits.
When I change my strings, it's hobnobs. You know, chocolate hobnobs.
Oh, good choice. Good choice.
That's my string changing biscuit. Like.
Indeed.
Yeah. Yeah, so Acid Age, winners of Metal the Masses. Who would you... I know this is maybe putting you on the spot and you may not want to answer it, but who did you think throughout the competition was like your biggest threat?
Grave Path or Cursed Sun. Cursed Sun for, you know, the longevity and, you know, I thought there was going to be a certain amount of like, this is your year, boys, you have tried it so many times. And see, to be honest, this is one thing I don't think a lot of bands talk about. After you get your name shouted out and you go up and you know, you're shaking hands and kissing babies, you're like George Bush at a press conference, you know. And like a lot of other bands come up and shake your hand, well deserved, and you can kind of see disappointment in their face.
Sure.
Yeah.
And you do feel like a dick. like you've done something terrible to them. You know, it's like, you know, you want to say I'm sorry, but you don't want to be patronising. You don't want to be an asshole.
Sure. Yeah.
And you don't want to be like, you know, you just say like, look, you did great. It was amazing. Thank you so much for playing with us. And that's kind of what I said to everyone. But you do see in the face, like, the made it all the way to the final and then just sunk at the end, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird, like, it's so many different feelings that I never anticipated, like, so.
Any bands you think should have been in it this year that didn't give it a go? I mean, there's a band that immediately jumps to my mind when I ask that question. I
think there's probably two, actually.
Yeah.
Go on.
Mortal Backlash, like.
Yeah.
I know we talked earlier, and I don't know this for sure, but I get the vibe that they didn't bow out ceremoniously last year, which I think is a big mistake on their hand.
That's what I'm saying. A lot of bands do. You know.
They're probably now sitting looking as well, though, going, well, last stage won this year, so probably won't win next year because he probably won't take a second thrash band.
Well, that's a silly way to approach it, because there's been bands of similar genres that have won.
Yeah, for sure.
I think the Crawling and what was Andy's Overoath?
Yeah. Lockhorns and
Oracle.
Yeah, you know what I mean.
Very similar.
I think it's really naive to not enter because you think your genre isn't the one.
Yeah,
you know.
I think that's true. It's absolutely true.
Unless you're like a indie band or something, you know.
Yeah, and I think, like, you know, even you just looking at, like, you know, Haint as well. Again, that's a very different vibe than bands we've sent previously. You know, so
I think
in fact, one of the things Simon said to us afterwards was, "What the fuck is your genre?"
And did you say war jazz?
That's me, because he was talking to me about war. Yeah, someone had dropped the war jazz thing because he was definitely referring. He was
that
like,
was me. Yeah.
He was like, I didn't really understand what that was. Kind of do I?
Yeah, that was me actually.
Adrian from Lost Brethren was like, "I fucking love that hashtag war jazz."
Do you know what? I'd like to bring up, like, Taras, I think, because we talked about them after their first heat, and we enjoyed them, but I think we offered up a lot of criticism. And holy fuck, did they deliver in the semi-final and then through to the final. Like, it turned out Hunter had been sick in her original heat, I think, as well. That semi-final performance was, I'm like jaws on the ground. I think it's the first time, because you being a judge, had someone in another band come up to you and say, put them through, forget about us, we want them through.
Yeah.
And
I can't help but think that next year's, I don't think we've ever seen two finals in a row that were similar in terms of lineup. I would be very surprised if next year the final doesn't have Green Path, doesn't have Terrace.
Were any of them
for
finalists
example,
last year?
Was that?
That's an interesting one. I don't think any
last
of them
year
were
us
finalists last
and
year.
Imperial Demonic went home in Heat 1.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
just thinking that. I'm just like, I think that was an entirely
I think it was.
new
It was.
final, like first timers the whole time.
Well, Cursed Sun have been.
Cursed Sun had
but-
the final a
but not
bunch of
last,
times.
but not last year.
They were so good as well. Cursed Sun, that was the best I've ever seen them.
I think
Agreed.
recently they've been playing the best that they have played.
They have, yeah. There's definitely been a jump in quality, I think
I
in
think
their
it's
live
more,
shows recently.
feels more natural as well.
Yeah.
The performance on stage feels less like an act.
The guitar
And
playing's
much-
off the hook in that band. Like,
Yeah.
it's really, really, really good musicianship. Like, and I love Spider-Man too. Climbing stuff and doing his new metal moves everywhere. Like, it's lethal. Me and Jake were talking about it before. It was like, oh, what do you think he's going to climb on today?
Funny enough, he didn't. He didn't climb anything. Maybe there's not enough climbables.
Age kicking in.
Should we kind of wrap things up then? Because I know people have time constraints and places to be, and more important things than
Lasagna to eat.
talking shite in my podcast. Fuck,
Can
lasagna
we
sounds
have?
good.
Yeah, can we eat for dinner?
No, my maha is probably enough.
I have to say, like, as someone that's watched the podcast a load of times, I love the studio. I think the wee jacuzzi's nice touch. And see the vending machine that just gives you champagne bottles? That's what
Only
I
the
like.
best for the guests.
Thank you very much.
Right, no, it was good to have you on. We'll definitely get you back at some stage.
Yeah, loved it.
For a
Thank
bit
you.
of crack.
And congratulations again, well deserved.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm
absolutely.
like still looking over my shoulder when people say that. Like, You know, someone talking to me.
It's not an episode of Punk. Aston Kutcher's not round the corner. You know.
No, it was strange. Like, this is not cool, but like, I'm gonna tell you anyway. Like, I've seen the clip of like Simon shouting out the winner. I've watched it so many times. Like, I think we've got something like 3,000 views on it, and about 2,800 are me. You know, like really? Couldn't believe it. Like, so it was class. Obviously, it has to be my favorite one. As I said, like, it has to be my favorite Metal to the Masses.
Yeah.
How could it not be? You know.
I mean, I always said I agreed. I think it was one of the strongest.
I think it's one of the best finals we've had on. You know, you just ever. It was just such a good vibe. Such, you know, all the bands were fucking brilliant, and yeah, just I had a fucking great time. That's it. You know, for me, it's like, well, I'm not there. I'm not invested. In any of the bands. I'm there as a punter, and as a punter, it was the best fun.
All the bands that were there, one thing that no one sees maybe is setting up gear and taking it on and off stage and lifting amps and all that. 6 bands, that's quite a lot of gear. Voodoo's, I love Voodoo, favourite venue in the world, but that green room is a fucking joke, and you can't store it up there, so you're up and down stairs, you know, with your stuff. And I have to say, every band ran like a fine-tuned engine. You know, it was efficient. Everyone was so nice to each other too. It was all like good luck, and it was sincere. You know, it didn't feel like hyperbole. Like, it was, you know, lots of bands genuinely being like, we all deserve this. You know, we've all worked to do this. You know?
Good to hear.
Awesome competition.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Any gigs coming up that you want to pimp before you cut off?
Yeah, we're playing with Solitary, and we're doing this Derry Metal Fest thing. You know, so
You are doing the Friday night, aren't you?
yeah, we're headlining the Friday night.
Yeah,
I think the Crawling's on the night after.
We can't make the Friday, but we're going to head up for the Saturday.
Yeah, do, man. Yeah. It's the kind of thing, if that goes well the first year, there'll be more of them, you know.
Exactly.
So, like,
And that can only benefit the whole scene, like getting it out of Belfast, having it starting to pop up and building that scene.
we find that those are usually the funnest gigs, you know, the ones you don't expect. Like, oh, we're playing Limavady. Okay, let's go down. And then you go down, and probably because they've got a lot of metalers and not a lot of bands, the place is heaving, you know. So those are nice ones.
Any other big gigs or any album news or gosh you got for us?
We're working on an album called Perilous Compulsion. That's our next one.
Nice.
Okay. Is that an exclusive? Has that been announced before? Or?
It's been announced on stage, but never like verbalized, I suppose.
Right,
like this. So.
We'll take what we can get.
Yeah, absolutely. So, it's a wee bit different from the last one. The last one was all recorded analog and stuff. We're kind of going for more of a modern production on this, but you know, you've heard a couple of the songs anyway on Friday night. So.
Big fan of Third Eye Locksmith. I think it's a cracking tune. So
that's about someone I know who literally started a religious cult, and I'm not joking. So I wrote a song about him, Third Eye Locksmith. You know?
Is it any good though? You know, like
the religious cult.
Yeah. I'm looking to something for the investment time in. You know,
I understand. Yeah. I would recommend heroin first,
right?
You know?
I think we're not going for a concept album this time. We're going
No. A bunch of cool songs.
Just a regular
bunch of cool songs. Looking forward to it. So
Thank you very much.
Hopefully an album launch for that too, and then you're playing this festival. I think called Bloodstock. Is that right? Yeah.
Something like that.
Might have talked about that before, but no, just made sure it's
Just
in
throw
there.
it in there. Yeah. Shout it out.
Right. Well, cheers for coming over.
Thank you very much, guys. Let's do a cheers.
And yourself. Well, I have an empty bottle.
Cheers anyway.
Cheers.
Thank you very much.
All
See you
right.
at Bloodstock.
Claire and Phil, same again. Cheers for coming on the podcast and
Cheers.
talking shit with us. So, thanks very much. And anyone that watched and made it this far through the podcast, cheers. Like, subscribe, all that old shite. And as always, keep listening to the wrong kind of music.